Right. So why am I a Buddhist? Well, actually, you've changed the title now, haven't you? So it's now, how did I become a Buddhist? That's what it was. And this is a really broad generalization, but it seems to me that there are two main ways that people seem to become Buddhists, in the sense that, firstly, often I hear that people just get what they want. They've got the thing that they've been sort of striving towards. They've got something close to the kind of life that they were looking for, and then in getting that, they realise that's not enough. There's a need for something more than that. Or secondly, it seems that often people get something that they really don't want, whether that's some sort of traumatic experience, a bereavement, a period of really intense difficulty that kind of shakes their life and makes them search more deeply for meaning within it. And I'm definitely an example of the first. I feel like I've had a really a blessed life. I've been very lucky. A lot's been given to me, yeah. But the second makes a much more interesting talk, much juicier. So I've been sort of racking my brains for some suitable examples of trauma. My grandparents died when I was quite young, so I didn't really register. But when I was 13, a very dear member of my family died, called Mitzi, but she was a greyhound and was pretty old. When I was 16, I witnessed a friend jump off a 6-meter high wall into pitch darkness, and I was alone. I didn't hear. There was no one else around, and I thought he was dead for about 5 minutes, but he wasn't, and we laughed about it. At university, I was hit by a car. I was hit pretty hard, and I got thrown a pretty long way. But because I hadn't seen the car coming, I didn't tense up, and I came away with a bruised ankle. So, yeah, jokes aside, I feel like I've really not, in a certain sense, I've really not suffered very much. And I'm very lucky for that. I'm an only child. My mum and dad are still together, still alive, still happy. Yeah, I sort of, I think I was quite quiet to begin with as a child. I really liked daydreaming. I liked reading books, doing sort of arts and crafts with my mum. I wasn't very sporty. And also I really liked going to the theatre. My parents liked going to the theatre, and they took me from when I was quite young. And I sort of feel like I tasted a bit of magic there. And I still think that the theatre can be a really sacred space at its best. So in a certain sense, I didn't really want for anything. I wasn't sort of extremely spoiled, but I probably was a little bit spoiled. Sorry, you're watching this, Mum. But I was sort of generally pretty happy with my lot in life, I think. But I definitely wanted something. There was definitely something I was sort of trying to do with my days. And looking back on it, I think there's a thread through my whole life, actually. A sort of search for a kind of wholeheartedness in experience, a sort of experience that is just completely absorbing and magic and imaginative, and something that I was sort of looking for and finding in the theatre and in books and so on. But that sort of desire really reached its peak when I was about probably 7 or 8, and the first Pokemon games were released on the Game Boy, and I got one of the first UK copies of Pokemon Red. And Pokemon Red, I don't know, some of you might know, is particularly great because it's got a picture on the game itself of Charizard. And Charizard is like this sort of red dragon figure, breathes fire, the whole works. It's the second evolution of Charmander, but if you, some of you will know that, and if you don't, you really don't need to. But in fact, I remember probably before this, I had the trading cards as well, and I remember doing a pretty canny trade in which I got my first ever shiny Charizard, and I remember holding it high in the air and running around the playground going, yes! But like really, really loud, like much louder than that. But even that sort of paled in comparison to getting this game. And in it you go on this sort of like mythic quest to capture magical beings and kind of try and become the ultimate champion of the world, which is attractive. And my mum, probably sensing some of this excitement, decided it would be a good idea if I didn't play the game until the school week was over. And so I had about 3 or 4 days of leafing through the instruction booklet, which she let me look at. And I must have read this thing several times. And about 10 years later, I found this little booklet. It's a little square booklet. It's made of paper, but it's sort of, the front cover is designed to look like a kind of leather-bound, like quest manual. And I found this thing when I was in my, like I must have been 17 or something, and got this massive whack of this sort of excited, this sort of bliss, this ecstasy of anticipation of like this thing that could be the potential of where something could take me. And I was like completely out of nowhere, just connected to this little bit of paper. So over time that must have lost its power, because I did eventually stop playing Pokemon games. So that sort of sense of an ideal experience that would be the pinnacle of my life didn't sort of come through. And I remember when I must have been about 13 or something, getting out of my parents' car and having this thought, I don't know what it's connected to, that I keep thinking, when I get that thing, I'll be really happy, that'll be great. I just need to get that thing and then everything will be sorted. And it sort of clocked that had never worked in the past and wouldn't ever work in the future. I can remember that very clearly. But I think I probably forgot about it as well. I sort of feel a bit like almost like I should feel kind of guilty or something for not just being totally happy with my lot. Like I feel like I've sort of been dealt a very good deck. But there's always been that sort of sense that there's got to be something fuller, there's got to be this wholeheartedness, this sense of just something more. And that's sort of, there's a kind of there's a sort of suffering attached to that, a kind of, it's almost like an existential kind of thing that's just missing. So I tried to look for that in a number of different ways, some more healthy than others. And mainly, from when I was 17, I started directing plays in the theatre. And I decided that was what it was going to be, that was the thing. And the idea of the professional theatre world was this kind of alluring thing in its potential. And so I sort of channeled my kind of life into that for a long period. And it wasn't really until the end of 2014 when I felt like I was sort of getting somewhere in it. So the end of 2014, I directed my first 3 professional shows, and they were pretty much back to back. And I had this sense of, and people kept telling me, it's like, that's great, you're doing really well. And I felt like I was sort of in that world. And I came out of the back of it. The last one was a Christmas show, and I came out of the back of it straight into the new year, feeling pretty drained and pretty uninspired or something, pretty like I'd got what I wanted and it wasn't enough. luckily, at the time I was living very close to the LBC, and I had a housemate who was starting to meditate, and I came along with him to learn to meditate, and liked the atmosphere, and Maitreya Bandhu was teaching, and I thought, this guy knows what he's talking about. And I remember leaving that evening and being like, I think I'm gonna come back here quite a lot. Little did I know. I just sort of followed through on that. I think I just had an intuitive sense that there was something of this potential that I've been looking for in different ways that existed in there. And so I went on a retreat, and I thought, there's like loads more to my mind and to life and community and so on. That year culminated in being asked to be on the team for this retreat. And I was still pretty new, and I'm very, very grateful to being asked. And I was doing the washing up. And it was the first time I'd done a long retreat as well. So I was both getting the experience of the kind of momentum of the retreat, and also really, and this has been my experience, been on the team for this retreat the last 3 years, and each year my experience has been that it's been a good retreat, but the most powerful thing is just sort of creating these conditions in which something happens and seeing the effect that it has on people here and just how people change. And that year I sort of, without really knowing what I was doing, sort of shook a lot and then asked for ordination with the sense that that was just right, that was just something I really needed to do with my life. And I've not regretted that one moment since then. David in my group was saying earlier, this sense of what the Buddha's given us is a great gift. And I have a real sense of that. I felt that really strongly on this retreat as well. And especially that the way that Bhante Sangharakshita has sort of translated the Dharma for us as a real gift. I see that more and more the more I practice it, and I feel like it's sort of the ultimate act of gratitude to kind of like commit myself to it, basically. I'd just like to, I was inspired by Maitreya Bandhu talking last night about dreams and about the poem this morning. And I just thought I'd finish with a dream that I had earlier this year. So it's pretty much it's the only dream that I can recognise in my life that has felt like immediately felt like an important dream, like something that I will like remember. The evening before, I live in one of the communities at the London Buddhist Centre, and before dinner I was meditating in my room doing the Metta Bhavana, and I was doing the Amitabha mantra. And Amitabha is this mythic Buddha. He's red, he's associated with sunset, with boundless love, and with peacocks. So I was doing that. And then we had dinner with our community, and we spent the evening together. There was lots of laughter, sort of sharing our experience, sharing our lives together. And then it wasn't until the next morning, sitting on the central line, that I remembered this dream, and it just sort of hit me very quickly. So in the dream, I'm walking along this cliffside road, and my dad's walking just behind me. And over the edge of this cliff is this deep blue bay with waves lapping against the beach and the blue sky. So we're walking along, and as we're walking along, this enormous, like 15-foot peacock just flies in over my shoulder, and I see it, and I run along the road just going, "Oh my God, yes!" But much, much louder than that. And this sense of like complete ecstasy. And if that wasn't enough, then another one came, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And they flew down into the bay, and then in the where the waves were meeting the beach, they started to fight. But it wasn't bloody. It was just like a sort of dance of vital energy. and then they transformed into kind of sort of rainbow-like nets that expanded and kind of started bouncing up to reach where we were standing on the cliffside path. And my dad was behind me saying, like, watch out, they're going to hit you. But I just knew that that was fine. And I stood there, and they landed on me, and they sort of dissolved onto me like mist. And there must have been more to the dream, because I can remember after that speaking to a figure and them saying, oh, after you left, there were many, many more of them. And I didn't feel sort of envious or like I'd missed out, but that that was fantastic, that there was this potential. And I'm really glad to be doing this with my life, because this movement it's not perfect, and the people who are teaching it for us aren't perfect, but I've never found anything like this that can create the conditions for something like that more and more to emerge in my mind and in the mind of others in unison. So I guess that's why I'm